Hi, Victor. Hey, Ben.
Hello, hello. Can you hear me?
Hello, yeah, I hear you.
All right, cool. Yeah, so thank you for setting this meeting up, Andrea. Really appreciate it. Thank you, Emil, Andrea, and also Victor. The more people that we have in here, the better. So yeah, so give me 1 sec. Actually, that's a good idea. Let me open my video as well. Okay, cool. So I think let me share my screen. Let me see if okay, share my screen real quick. I'm gonna open up PR once I can get it in markdown view. All right, so share screen. So many things open. All right, here we go. Okay. Can you guys see this? Except
quite small, but I guess I can increase on my end.
Oh, that's why. Okay, cool. All right, I can also enlarge it here in a sec. All right, how's that look?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, cool. Let me also see if I can remove your guys' faces here. Okay, so I wanted to kind of go over some of the comments that you guys had. Mostly to we're gonna have this back and forth, and I want to kind of get this knocked out. So that's kind of the intention here. And then I will update this as well, because I saw also Dan had some questions as well, mostly about like the examples and whatnot. So yeah, where did the comments go? Did There they are. For some reason they disappeared. Okay. Oh, interesting. I didn't know when you put it in markdown, it actually removes the comments. I thought that seems like a bug in GitHub, because when you go back, it doesn't actually repopulate the comments. Okay, cool. So we'll start here. So it says here the event ID is unique for each event. I don't think this could be used. So, oh yeah, this is absolutely true. I was confused to which was the correct one, but it looks like subject ID is pertaining to the subject. That makes more sense. This is the one that I was a little bit confused about, Andrea. So like we have a test start and test run, basically, right? Like those two. And you said the event themselves might not begin or end, but the activity they describe, might. So I guess my question is, what are you asking here? Like, what is the, because you just kind of illustrate this point, but you don't ask any questions or anything of that nature.
I guess was a comment on the. I wasn't sure I understood what you meant with the event. We don't know when an event begins or finishes. So I was trying to see if that was related to these. So there was kind of, I wanted to mention what we have in terms of beginning and end. Okay. But yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that definitely makes sense. Yeah, so yeah, 1 second. My headset's dying here. Yeah. So that is partially true. So where when we do backtracking, it's when I say events here, I'm not talking about, so I need to use, I think this needs to be span. Event needs to be, let me see, event needs to be span. So what I'm talking about here specifically is the whole event span, meaning like when let's say when the whole CI/CD flow has started and when it has all finished, right? We don't know when that begins or starts. We know when the individual things begin and start, but we don't necessarily know when the individual like pipeline has started or whatnot without really inspecting all the predicates themselves, right? So that's kind of like what I was getting at here. So
Okay,
I'll
Yeah.
rename that because that's definitely because event is being used very, very vaguely or ambiguously here.
Well, then to add to it, then since you're referring to a span, what I would say is that it may be a matter of perspective of the viewer also what the span exactly is. So depending on what you're looking for, if it makes sense. So maybe for someone, the span begins with a pull request and finishes with a artifact being published to a repository.
Right.
For someone else, it starts with a feature definition and it ends with code in production. For someone, it starts with a deployment and finishes with some monitoring event. So it depends.
Absolutely. And what's great, and that's why I have this section down here about the add links, because customers or users can actually define what their event life cycle or event span life cycle is. They'll need to go a little bit lower level, but we can address that, once we establish the spec. We can figure out how to make that easy for customers, but they can absolutely do this with this SDK. So that's the goal, at least. So if that helps, Andrea. Okay, cool. So I'll also define that, which I think I do define it up here, or I define it lower. I call it CDEvent span, but I failed to. I'll link it down here as well. Okay. So okay, I definitely saw Emil's point here. Due to the limitation of the scope. But the reason why I made it this definition so limiting in scope is because I thought the original, so maybe I'm wrong here. So this could be my complete misunderstanding, or what your guys' scope was for CDEvents. But I thought CDEvents was interoperability between CI/CD systems, the lifecycle.
Yeah, I would say this, but as just Andreas said before, I think it's not really a well-defined start activity for a CI/CD system. Often, I guess you refer to a pull request being either created or pushed or merged, but it could as well be some feature being defined and later the pull request for it is pushed.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So, and so that goes back to what Andrea was saying, and where the SDK would allow.
The end-to-end thing.
Okay. So since there's some confusion, so since you guys both had that confusion, I will make an action item here. Specifically address confusion around how users can define their own custom CDEvents span life cycles. Okay, will this satisfy both you and Andrea's confusion, or do you think that will help future users reading this if this was particularly added? Okay,
I believe it does, and it says artifacts there as well in the same sentence, and I'm not sure what the artifact in that means really.
Yeah, I wanted to keep that ambiguous.
But I understand, but since we use artifacts already in the spec, I think the people can be confused.
Okay, fair enough.
I guess it could be a source change that is an artifact as well, or
define artifact, or figure out a better way of phrasing how a CI/CD or CDEvent span starts. Okay, cool. That should be good then. Because yeah, I could definitely see the confusion, but I wanted to leave that ambiguous because I didn't want to limit, because like you said, it's already quite limiting. I didn't want to limit it too much. So, yeah. But yeah, okay, that's definitely
Andrea, a question. I think when we talked to Steve Pereira on VSM about this, didn't he mention a term like system of work or something? No, not system.
Well, he was using entities and systems, I think.
Entities and system of work or something like that. And yeah.
Yes.
So an entity can maybe not be an alternative if you with a very broad thing there, then.
Yeah, entities is good. I mean, entities is yeah, it's definitely broader than artifacts. So yeah, maybe entity for this particular one.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think regarding your question, Ben, about the mission of CDEvents, I think it's interoperability in the CI/CD space, or in the CD space, but not necessarily only between CI/CD systems. As well, I guess it depends what the CI system gives you, but like we include things like software management systems, which is not strictly speaking a CI/CD system, or artifact registries, deployment system. So the whole set of tools that, make your CD from source to, or even now we are maybe considering from idea definition, feature definition to production and so forth.
Okay. Yeah, so that kind of aligns to what I was thinking, but I wasn't sure if that was the issue here, but it seems like it wasn't. It seems like it was just this use of artifacts and also this confusion.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to see if that was a potential issue here, but it looks like not. Oh, so this is what Dan Hahn also. So okay, cool. So now we're kind of getting more into the meat of things. And yeah. So this kind of goes back to allowing users kind of define what a start point is, a starting CD event span, and ending a CD event span, which will create this global ID, right? But you're saying you see an issue with upstream, downstream events in the flow, like, oh yeah, this is kind of related to that.
Yeah.
Okay, so this should still be solved with that earlier comment. This is actually not potentially true. So generally they will, but they could have multiple or different global IDs. So, but family span, I think what I'm going to call it, I'm going to rename global ID to maybe CDEvent span ID. Do you think that will be a better name?
I don't know if we should use the term CDEvents within the spec itself.
Oh, right. Maybe just span ID then. What do you think?
Yeah, if we should go with it in this way. We have comments later on about OpenTelemetry related terms and such as well. So we can maybe come back to this once.
Okay.
Later.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, cool. So so including the whole parent, this won't grow indefinitely, Andrea. This is always the immediate parent or parents, depending on if it was a fan out, fan in situation. So that's kind of the reasoning for that. And I kind of explained this to Emil back one of the SIGs, like why it's like this. And it's more for 9 times out of 10, people are going to care about what their parent did. And this isn't the immediate parent. This is the logical grouping of parents. So what I mean by that is, so when you have a CI source change, right, that gets pulled into CI, that runs a bunch of tests, and that uploads the artifact, right? That might be considered one, that might be considered a logical grouping parent. And so that parent would be passed. Only that source change, that thing that started it, would be passed to the newer or the new fields, if you will. So that's kind of the idea there. It's still kind of a little bit shaky, but I'll still kind of define that. And the reason, so that what's good about that though is users can again still define what these logical groupings are. It all depends on this like link context. But my goal is that the CDEvents SDKs would kind of handle a lot of this for you. And if you have some special use case, you can, remove those hooks and add your own. So it's kind of my thinking there. Let me go back out here. So with that said, this wouldn't grow indefinitely. This would be the root parent that kind of like started the whole crux of things. That would get passed along. And what I try to do with this image, this image actually doesn't have it. I'll add an image to kind of better illustrate what I'm talking about. Action item. Add image to better illustrate parents. Right. Okay. Yeah, actually, it does make sense. So actually, at first I thought it was a little bit shaky, but it's actually not, because tests are usually a sub thing that happens in the CI system, right? So that's all contained in the CI system. So like what I guess I'm getting at here. So CI kind of happens like this. So we got a source change, which gets changed, which triggers tests, which then triggers an if tests pass, right? And so let's assume it passes, and if it passes, it uploads artifact, right? So that's kind of like the idea here. So it would be these three things, and then the CD system would then let's say consume the upload artifact, consume upload artifact CD event, which then would have or CD would consume, which would have the source change in there, source change as the parent. Does that make sense?
Well, in some cases it might, but in many cases you can have like hundreds of source changes in one artifact. You can build like a composition of a lot of things within one artifact. So I don't think we can contain all of that always within one artifact published event or something like that.
Right. No, wait, let me think about that, because you would have, let's say, hundreds of artifacts. But no, this source change though would be like GitHub though, right? Like this upload artifacts would just be the regular CD event.
Yeah, but often you integrate multiple things into one artifact and then you publish that.
Oh, then you publish that? Let me think. So if you integrate,
CD continues after that, I guess, when you've published the artifact.
Yeah, so that would just be the normal source change initial CD event, right?
Yeah, but it could be multiple more source changes included in the same artifact.
Yeah, but wouldn't that be a fan out, fan in situation?
Not a fan out, but a fan in. So you have multiple. I mean, one source change probably kicks off the initial build, but that build brings in a lot of other source changes as well from other places, libraries and stuff, maybe.
I think it depends what kind of semantic we want to express in this. Like you have in Eiffel different type of semantic. So if it's what immediately triggers a certain artifact being created, then, you know, but if you have like an artifact that depends on 100 other artifacts, it depends. You could express all the dependencies in there, but then maybe the event is not the right spot for doing that, because it could be too many of them. But it could be the specific, or alternatively, it could be the specific event that trigger your build, which could be the fact that one of the dependency had a new version, or that maybe someone created a ticket or an issue saying, yeah, we need to actually update this dependency, or it could be that there was a CVE that was the input of the process. I guess, oh, sorry.
What?
No, I was going to say, I mean, for certain type of links, I think we will still need to rely on things like having a standardized IDs, like the package URL format that we are adopting. So if you want to be able to, let's say let's say that you have a CVE and you decide that you want to have this new artifact, build this new artifact by pulling in certain versions of other artifacts. And if you want to have an extended view of your span, if you will, or workflow, you could use the package IDs of the different packages to see their span of how they were created. So you could have then like the tree starting, or it's not a tree, but you could have like, you could see like from source change for each of them, and they would then converge into the
right. Okay, so maybe the idea here then, okay, so we have the source change, but this would be a source change parent object, like maybe a new object. And I was telling Emil, like if you need more information, you can query the links API to retrieve more information. So maybe that's something we could do, because a lot of the times they just care about a few things from the source change parent. So maybe we just include what is probably most cared about only.
But that's one thing that I'm a bit concerned about, because I mean the producer of the data shouldn't really make a lot of assumptions on what the consumers would need in any special occasion.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to include everything. But
yeah, exactly. So I mean, either we should include everything, or we should include just the reference, so it can be.
No, I think I don't want.
Or we can include some well-known, of course, convenient data, but we will never succeed in having a complete picture there, I guess.
Yeah. But I think, but we can though make an assumption that some things are necessary and definitely some things are not, right? Because there are probably cases where someone might not care, or where everyone might not care about a particular thing, right? Which I think, you know, to say that, you know, is very, you know, I guess kind of, you know, like kind of a, you know, hopeful, but I think we can start with a subset potentially. And if people are asking to include things, we can either include them or figure out new ways, or maybe what we do is include a subset of what a lot of people need. And if they need more, look at if this is a growing number of requests that people want, add that as a new field, or tell them if they need that information, they will need to query the links API. Maybe we can go with a hybrid approach there. What do you guys think?
Yeah, could make sense.
Yeah. Something that I was thinking about is that, so when a producer produces an event, I think it has some extra context that might not be elsewhere, which is maybe, I don't know, the decision, why that activity is needed, or a certain relationship between a certain input, if there was an input event, to the activity that is now being done.
Mm-hmm.
And that specific context is might only be available to the producer. So going back to the example that I was saying below, maybe the producer is evaluating a certain policy that is written in your system that, I don't know, if a certain CVE is discovered, you automatically need to regenerate a build and do something. And that link
between the fact that a policy was evaluated, that the CVE was discovered, and that the build was triggered. It's not found anywhere else other than the producer business logic. So I think that kind of link we should request to have it expressed in the CD event. And then, as you said, we can have more information if the producer wants to pull in more information and add more links, but also other links. It's something that the consumer then might be able, using the links API, using some other means to then pull that other information. But I think the information about the consequence of certain inputs that generated the event that is being sent, that specific relationship, I think it's maybe unique to the producer, and so the producer should have the responsibility of including that if it makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So I think I need to think about this a little bit more. So I'm going to write the issues here. And if I miss anything, you guys can just update it. And I will come back to this. But I think for now, we should just include everything until I could come up with a good way of dealing with this, because I don't want to create custom types. And the reason for that is I think managing that, we're already managing a spec. Now we're managing what, parent links are going to be, which could be open to change as well. So that's why I'm a little bit hesitant there, but if we need to do it, we need to do it. But yeah, we may need a subset of the parent rather than the whole thing. Okay, so and then what was there any other issues here, just other than the parent being potentially really large?
No, I think you clarified that also it would be just immediate parents. And
okay, yeah.
So I think just one other comment. We have, I guess, the benefit as opposed to maybe things like open telemetry or general tracing to have a specific context, which is CI/CD. So I think it's probably very valuable to have this kind of flows like you wrote here in the comment as part of our documentation, and to make example of how to use what we are discussing in those specific contexts. And then if someone else comes with a new different use case and say, oh, how does that apply to the spec? And if it doesn't apply, or we haven't thought about it, then we can add new things.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, cool. Okay, so this is a confusion. Yeah, I saw this comment. This is a confusion of, I meant logical grouped parent. So that's the issue here. Yeah, so if you guys didn't see this, he was talking about test. He was like, he didn't understand that the parent, why wouldn't it be test suit finished? Because, you don't typically, as a CD system, you don't really care about this. You care more about what's being changed or merged. So yeah, that's just a confusion on the spec itself. So definitely need that image, definitely need to clarify. And I did see your comments here, Emil. So I understand it's not been a major showstopper for you, not having global IDs, but it's going to be a major showstopper for us, unfortunately, just because our system, they're just really large. And I was looking at some benchmarks from 2022. I can actually share the study. I'll find it and link it in here. That graph DBs, and then just querying, I saw that you mentioned Mongo too, and they actually do use Mongo as a graph DB as well. So they do exactly what you're talking about down here. And it's dramatically more slow than just using a global, or some sort of primary key. And because of that slowness is going to be an issue for us. There have been so many things since being here. So I've been at Apple for 2 years, and since being here, we've dropped so many technologies and had to replace them for others because they didn't scale as well as they advertised. So this is more to prevent that that transition for us, because we've already seen it happen. Like I've already seen it in my 2 years here, three times. Like three times where we had to move from one system to another system because it didn't scale well. So that's kind of like why. So I hope that that's a good enough reason for you. I know it's a little bit anecdotal, but it really comes down to what we've already done, or what we've already experienced in the past. And this global ID is the quickest way. Well, it's the quickest way I could think of getting all the events. So is that okay with you? Or do I need to word? Is the better question? Do I need to word this better?
Well, I don't know. I mean, if you have a very, very large, I mean, we have a large system. I mean, we have probably thousands of events in one chain, and we don't have major problems with these. And we have millions of events in the database, obviously.
Yeah, but we're talking
and we
about
don't use
million...
a graph database. Yeah. So
yeah.
I mean, if we would use a graph database, we would have even less problems. Yep, I agree. We don't get milli or microsecond responses to our queries. We don't, but we probably don't need that either at the moment. But yeah, I agree. It will be faster if we have an indexed ID that could be quicker to look up. I guess struck me right now actually that global ID, or what we should call it, could actually be created on the, if we call it then the links API side, or the store, the database side itself. I mean, if you...
Oh, you're right. Yeah. Potentially.
If we send events which have some kind of relation in between them, just a serial relationship, or fan in, fan out and those things, then the database itself could actually identify that, hey, this event actually corresponds or is connected to this previous event. So I add another global ID on top of these events, which are already related. So the database could actually introduce that if we want to.
Yeah, that's actually a good idea. I'm gonna look into this. I have to think about this because it is a new idea, and I'm not the type of person that just says, "Oh, that'll work," unless it's immediately obvious to me. But things like this, where I have to think about it some because there's a lot of moving pieces. I'll think about this, and then I'll get back to you if that's okay with you, Emil.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, cool. And then, yeah, you're absolutely right here about this not being true, because there is a study where they do use MongoID. So I'll word this better, to say limits it to only GraphDBs, with the caveat that you can use any SQL database as GraphDB, but it's not as intended, right? If that would be a better wording there.
I have a question on the global ID. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries.
What I'm trying to figure out is that going to be one per event, or is it going to be an array per event? So is it possible? Do we consider the possibility for an event to be part of multiple spans, so to say, or flows, or whatever we call them? Or
no.
do we specifically restrict to one?
To only one. And the reason for that is because you could have, so basically you would have one, right? But if you need multiple, that is probably saying, you just need to make that one include the multiple, right? Like just to, so there's two options there. You have let's say you have three separate spans, if you will. You can either have them as three separate spans or make them one singular span. Again, that's kind of up to you. But I would be, if there's any sort of relation to span 2 to span 1, that should be one single span, right? Because it has to do like that. That means that life cycle isn't over yet, right? And based off the definition, it's that whole life cycle. Does that make sense, Andrea?
Yeah, I guess it makes sense if what the life cycle is defined in advance. So when you're producing the events, but if you want to have the possibility of having larger or different kind of flows later on, depending on the viewer perspective, it's not necessary. I don't know. But I guess you could have then different queries that select
based
different
on it.
parts, and then having the ability of connecting them.
That can definitely be done with the Links API today if needed. So
is it the way that you must configure then one of the systems in your toolchain to say you're the one that is producing the global ID, or?
Maybe. So Emil brought up a good point right here. I'm going to first look into this. Okay, so I'm going to add to this how global ID is actually generated in the system. I think this is a big question that it looks like that's being asked here. Okay, so I'll look into this, and I'm first I'm gonna look into Emil's question, because if this can be done, that simplifies everything. So I'm going to first look into this, but like I said, it's a lot too many moving pieces for me to kind of figure it out right now. And then if this works, I will update it, update it with this question, how this global ID is generated in the spec. If this doesn't work, then I'll continue thinking about it, and I might bring in you guys again to kind of like talk about some ideas that I might have, and then kind of figure out what the best next step is for the global ID generation. Does that work for you for now, Andrea? Basically, I'm saying I don't have enough information right now based off of this first comment here, or this comment that Emil had.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, we can follow up.
Okay, cool. Because mostly the spec was to outline the schema, right? Not necessarily how to define like how the system, like that's more of the technical details. But if we need to go that deep, we can. But I wanted to make this more of a proposal rather than a technical document, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah, I understand, and I agree. And only the fact that what is the logic, I guess, or the behind generating the global ID, I guess, has an impact on whether it makes sense to have the global ID, or makes sense to have one, or makes sense to have many. So that's just because there is this consequence, but I agree we shouldn't, go and define here the details of the algorithm used to generate a global ID or things like that. That's not
right. So I guess with that said, I'll leave the algorithm, I'll leave the ideas out here, but I will add, I will first do some research into this, think about this some, and then if this works out, I will highlight that the global ID that is a simple way, could be simply generated by the link service itself. We don't have to worry about it, anywhere else, basically. So that is one thing I can first look into. But if that's not the case, then I will have an open-ended question that I will say a follow-up document is needed. So there'll be a proposal document, which is this document, and then a technical document, which will define how to hook and start or create all these moving pieces, if you guys are okay with that.
Yep.
Okay,
yeah, makes sense.
Cool. Yeah, all right. So yeah, like I said, action item here. Absolutely not true, but needs to be reworded or simply removed. Okay, so that makes sense. Okay, so that's basically the gist of it. So you guys brought up a lot of good questions. I definitely have some bigger action items. I'll look into this. There was also
there was some comments on the general PR as well itself, not in the file, but in the PR itself. There are some comments.
Oh, are they? Okay. Let me see. Let's go back here. Okay, so this is that. Wait, give me 1 second. Did I expand? Okay, so there's that. Oh, okay. So yeah. Wait, this is also part of the spec. Oh yeah, that's also true. That's true. Also there. Okay, here
That's
we go.
Okay, that was a recent comment from me. Yeah.
Oh yeah, for the open telemetry.
Right.
So yeah. So I understand what you're talking about here, and again, I think so. This is actually basically using open telemetry. Like it's a very, very, very simplified form of open telemetry's trace context, basically. That's the idea. But that's again more of the technical document. But again, we don't want to use open telemetry because they have a lot more stuff than what we need. So it's kind of like what I was kind of going at. So I guess my question is,
I don't know if I agree actually, because I think we could have actually used open telemetry. I mean, I think there is an extension, or at least proposed extension, to CDEvents, which would include open telemetry data, so you can declare parents and parent and child relationships, and also spans in the cloud event, on the cloud event level itself, and we could inherit it into the CDEvent if we like. But then I think we should actually, if we think that open telemetry way of relating events to each other is a good one, and we can make use of it for both the parent-child relationships, but also for the causal relationships, maybe between these spans that we talked about before.
No, open telemetry, like we already use open telemetry like here at Apple. And so like what you suggested would be a very easy way for us to use open telemetry with CDEvents. But even making that easier for us, I'm saying no. And the reason why is using open telemetry for this is like using a gun to kill an ant. Like like open telemetry does a lot. And one thing you could do if you're really set on this, we can add. So open telemetry has this thing called a plugin system that you can add for the collector, which is basically what we're going to have as well. Which would be the service, if you will, the link service. And that plugin could just basically be our CDEvent spec. So we can do that and make it compatible, but that's the thing. We should make it compatible or allow for a plugin to be added to OpenTelemetry where it could be used. And people find to use that, then we can go ahead and always use that. But like I said, it's doing OpenTelemetry it's also not small. So you're bringing in a huge, like I said, a huge library into just doing these, basically just these three things. So that's kind of my concern there.
Okay. I don't have much experience or no experience at all using OpenTelemetry myself, so I might be out on very deep waters here. But I was just thinking that if we use the same, not just the same concepts exactly, but also use OpenTelemetry in the cloud event or the CDEvent part, we could actually reuse any different consumers of that OpenTelemetry data, so we don't need to build those, maybe even the link service ourselves, because OpenTelemetry can provide much of it for us. Maybe I'm out in deep waters, as I said, but that was my thinking, at least. Right.
And I'm all for doing less work, but again, it is overkill. And,
might be.
Yeah. And if that is, the case, right? Like why invent a new service, particularly for this use case, right? But no, this is overkill. Like, I don't know if you, like you said, like you might not have experience. I can list the reasons why it's overkill. I think I did at one point somewhere.
I think we had a separate issue on that actually. So I think it would be very interesting to elaborate a bit on OpenTelemetry relationship with CDEvents. And if you have experience, I think you can contribute there. That would be great.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so I'll definitely follow up here with OpenTelemetry because, like I said, like this is where I started. So when I was originally writing the proposal, I actually started here, but then I was like, okay, this is OpenTelemetry is way too overkill for this, and then moved to using the iFull links with the own link service. So like I said, I started here, but ended up after doing more digging was like, this is probably not a good idea. It looks good on like when you first think about it, but once you start digging into like how big the dependencies are, what all open telemetry does, it makes it's a little yeah, like I said, it does a lot more than just these three things, and it's definitely a lot more granular as well.
It does less as well, I guess. Well, it depends. I mean, for open telemetry, specifically the distributed tracing part, I guess it relies on the W3C specification that I put in the trace context, and that is pretty contained. It's pretty small. I mean, it's not like the whole open telemetry specification is just like the small bit that tells you how to propagate.
So have you ever used? Well, oh, sorry. But then what?
But that's just a tree, right? It's just fan out.
Yeah.
And so if you want to have this concept of having multiple parents, like I believe it was an array of parents that you can have.
Yeah.
It's not something you can do with this format.
Yeah. You couldn't. You would have to query that and actually get every single and you would have to possibly use tags. So yeah. So you're absolutely right there, Andre. But also another thing, this is self-contained, but I don't know if you've ever pulled in a tracing library. Open telemetry is one spec among so many. So when you pull in a tracing library, it's going to include open telemetry. It's going to include what is it called? Starts with a J. So there's another, and then there's
Jaeger.
Yeah, Jaeger. So yeah, there's this Jaeger spec. There's a Zipkin spec. There's open telemetry. So when you pull in a single library, it's including all three, and they all are slightly different. And so how does open telemetry handle this with their collector? They have plugins that convert the Zipkin to an open telemetry standard, or to the open telemetry standard. So that's why I'm saying it's overkill, because it includes all this other stuff. So yeah, that's the concern. But with that said, Emil, I think you're right. I need to elaborate, because I have it. I think I posted a Slack message on why it's not, and I gave all these reasons. But I need to capture that here in this PR, because it's kind of like, it doesn't really. It only talks about the proposal, the introduction, but not why not using this, right? So, I can definitely do that. Would that satisfy your concern here?
Yeah, for the first section, yeah, and the second section is something different there. And the second section is what I wrote before you actually explained what the parent was. I thought that the parent was just the immediate events, but now you say that it's actually a full chain of events. But so maybe we cannot make it as simple as I stated there. Oh, maybe we can anyway, actually.
Yeah. We could. Yeah. Because
you can open up that example just there and quickly see what it looks like, because there is an example of one event with some different links. Then I call them links, but you call them parents. That's the same thing.
Yeah. Yep.
So if you go down to the second gray box there, you have a links object there. Yeah, with two different parents, so to say, in two different links.
Mm-hmm.
One being the causal event that caused this thing to happen, and the other one being the artifact in question here. And we could then also add a source change maybe here, it's type source change. So the reason to have the type there is that we want to distinguish before we actually go into the actual event there, what is this type of relation?
Mm-hmm.
And then I actually reuse the CDEvents terms there in the target.
Yeah, I see that.
There. So what is most important is the ID, which is then the actual event ID, the globally unique ID. Mm-hmm. And then all the other things from the subject there could be optional, because they provide convenience for the consumer, so they don't need to look it up through a link service or something. You can have all details there from the event itself, or you can leave it out, and then it's up to the consumer to bring in that information from the links API or the data.
Yep. Yeah. No. So you're absolutely right. With what you just explained there, sorry, I understand what you're explaining there, but yeah, I think with explaining like what the parent is, we still should be able to do this. and include all this necessary information. But the biggest question, like I said, since we've already talked about it so much, the biggest question is how large can this get, right? So once I answer that, that was the other thing I have to look into and think about some. So I'll look into that. I'll be sure to answer this question. So I'm going to put let me see. Can I put, I'll put this here just to remind me to look at this second part and re-answer this, as well as expand on or add. I'm going to add a section saying, why didn't we go with open telemetry?
Yeah, that would be valuable, I think. Yeah. So,
yeah. Okay, cool. And I already explained that. Okay, cool. So, so it looks like we went through all the comments. So with that said, I'm going to tell you what the plans are for the next kind of week, 2 weeks, probably 2 weeks. The plan is to address all those action items. So the doc is starting to get starting to kind of like solidify. I'm going to start updating the JSON schemas to what we know are going to be that are more likely to not change. And then the ones that are still kind of up in the air, like parent and so on, and all those, then I'll probably just kind of keep that as just an object that hasn't been filled out yet with any details. But I'll update the specs. I'll plan this for 2 weeks from now. I'll have this updated, and then I'll also update it to include this versioning policy. And then I'll have to look into this, but I'll do these within the next 2 weeks as well. So I'll get those checked off. So yeah, I just want to kind of give you the idea and the plan. So within the next 2 weeks, this will be ironed out. If you guys have any more questions, we might have to have another meeting if there's still some things up in the air, but if the questions look like there's not going to be a lot of back and forth, then I'll just leave it in the PR. Does that sound good?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. So this has been super helpful. Like I said, thank you for taking some time to, out of your day to, to meet with me and discuss this. I always feel like these are a lot more productive than just trying to figure out what people are trying to say in the GitHub comments when I might misunderstand. So it's good to have the one-on-one back and forth. So with that said, I think we're pretty much done now. So unless you guys have any other questions, I think we're pretty good.
Yeah, no, thanks a lot. I think it's really helpful as well. Just one more thing, not necessarily for this next iteration, but I think when we introduce the link service, we might want to kind of give more context about what kind of environment we're considering. I guess, at least in my mind, I imagine an organization and they have all these tools, so they set up their link service, and that link service talks to the different tools within the organization. We have use cases where we go actually beyond the boundaries of a single organization. And that's something that we might tackle in future, I guess. So, but I think it's good maybe to give a little bit of context on where this feature, what is the context that where it lies, kind of. But yeah, so that's just one.
So that'll, like I said, so once this proposal is approved, I'll start immediately working on the technical document, which will address those questions. So all these deeper technical questions, which I think, they need to be answered. I will do a technical document, and then we'll address all these questions of how is global ID generated, that algorithm, also where does this link service, or how and where potential areas can this link service exist, and then kind of go from there. So yeah.
We also have this. We also have this issue about what is it now? Evidence store, right, Andrea?
Yes.
Which is quite related, I think, to the link service. It's more or less. I mean, to me, it could be another name for the same thing, but maybe it's slightly different. So please look into that issue and then comment there as well on this areas on the link service there.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, because I think they kind of some of that overlaps, like you had just said, Emil. So yeah, I can definitely maybe not in this proposal, but maybe in the tech spec start addressing those questions. But at least with the proposal, we have something that's defined, and then the tech spec is now going to be defining how we implement it, and then we can start going ahead and implementing. I don't know if you guys do it that way, because I don't know if I saw technical specs in your guys's repo there, but I'm a big fan of documents, so I like to have things kind of defined, and then I feel like it makes implementation a little bit easier. But if you guys are not comfortable doing that, maybe we could just do a smaller tech spec to answer the bigger questions, and then go ahead and start implementation. So I'm fine with either. Like I said, this is your guys' organization. I'm just kind of like trying to help out. So whatever your guys' process is, just let me know, and I can do my best to fit in that process.
Yeah, I guess the spec could specify some kind of requirements on such a link service, but shouldn't maybe specify exactly what the link service looks like in itself and the surroundings, but maybe some requirements that then could be referenced.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good then. So yeah, it looks like we're pretty much done here.
If that's can I ask here?
Yeah, sorry, Victor. Yeah.
I'm a database guy. I'm just interested in a lot of this stuff, and I'm a really high level. So I understand, looking through the CDEvents, look like there's some like roadmaps. Is there like a more higher level, like business level, what is going to help overall, business value? What does the CDEvent provide? Is there such a document or link?
Well, we have a white paper, which might be.
A white paper must have that information.
Yeah, so if you. Let me put the
real quick,
here.
Victor. So just to kind of elaborate on your question, are you asking the use cases or what CDEvents is trying to solve, or like what are you asking exactly?
What exactly? What is it trying to solve? What with CDEvent, what it brings to the overall value, right? I look at a lot of the documentation. Looks like CDEvents is good for, of course, automation, and it's also mapping to the dollar reports, right? What's the value of the dollar reports? The Google brings. There are also other things that other groups are working on. For example, the not directly related, the chaos group is also working on other metrics. That's basically how to measure the success of an open source community, right? So there's a lot of good efforts that's going on altogether. So yeah, I'm just curious, like the CDEvents, what kind of role do they play in overall bigger picture? That's what I'm trying to figure out.
So Andre, I know you probably can answer this best, but I think can I start, because I want to give him like why Apple wants to use it, which I think might give him a good idea on why he might be interested in this. If that works for you, Andrea.
Yeah,
right,
sure,
cool. Yeah. So I'm Ben. So I work at Apple, and we're very interested in CDEvents, and the reason is so. I talked a little bit about changing between services and features because it didn't scale well, right? But what does that what happens when we do that? Well, we now have to update everything. We have to update the APIs that we call. We have to update all the code that talks to all these different things. So that's the biggest thing. The tech debt that is required when making a change is massive. But if we had a system or a standard or a protocol that spoke the same language and the same APIs, then we can swap things in and out, add things as needed. We can also add, just like a new database that just came out, or sorry, not a new artifact store that just came out that still is in question, but we could just kind of add that to the big tool of chains and just see how well it performs, right? So that's why we're interested, is that it makes plug and play that much easier. And since we're constantly trying to scale, at our level, this is a huge win for us. So that's kind of why we're interested in it.
Very interesting. Yeah. So I'm a database guy, traditional database guy. So scalability is a big thing. Another thing that's going on in the CNCF world is about the platform, right? So what sounds like you're basically just testing different components. You find that the components not scalable, you just switch another one. Like by standardized CD events, they allow you to do all the testing, all the integration, streamline that process.
Yep.
That seems to be a huge use for this. Yeah, I see that. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and so I think that's great. That resonates very much with what I would say, Ben. So that's great. I think what I've seen as well is like within the same organization, different teams, they have knowledge about different tools and they want to stick with them. And so that also is a similar scenario where you have different tools and they're maybe talking different languages. And so it makes it harder when you then want to bring a new tool in, and then if you're working like at platform level, like you were saying, Victor, and you have some new tool that you bring in, and then it has to talk with a tool that team A uses, with a tool that team B uses, and the tool with team C uses, then you have, again, the same problem. You need to start creating integration within all of them. And if there is a single language, then it's relying on interoperability. So you just drop it in and it should work.
Yeah, maybe you can even expand it further on. So I'd be interested in there's a lot of high level things and security in particular. It sounds like, for example, there's a lot of like open source activities trying to figure out how to handle the CI/CD pipeline for to make it secure, right? There's a lot of effort on supply chain security. This effort, the CD event, could also help there because they are, for example, the hardware industry, they are also trying to make it their supply chain security, but they're not doing as much as the software industry, right? So, I mean, this could be also adapt the same idea, I guess, to a different use case.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we started talking with the OpenSSF because they have similar kind of problems or like questions of interoperability, because they want to, I guess their mission is to make it easy by default to do your builds and have your CI/CD system, your software production factory secure. And so for CD events or similar type of standardization could be helpful for them to specify what kind of information the different tools should exchange between each other, so that you have the right context to do things securely, if it makes sense. So we are starting with this conversation with them, and one of the use cases also that some of our end users brought up is things like audit trail. So if you have all your tools in your tool chain that are producing these events, and you collect them in this what they call evidence store, which could be the links database or whatever. But if you can trust the content of these events, then you can basically build an audit trail of everything that is running in your production system. You can go look up the artifact IDs, and then you can collect the entire series of events that led to that state.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. That's interesting.
Well, yeah, it's good to see you, Victor. It's always nice to see new faces. So yeah, with that said, if we don't have any more questions, I'll go ahead and address those action items. So I've added on my sprints, actually. So CD events, I have allocated time to now work on the proposal as well as anything else. So if we need to do anything, just let me know, and then I have that time to do that. As before, I had kind of like fight for it, but now I have allocated time. So yeah, with that. Yeah. So with that said, I think we should be good here. And then, yeah, if you have any questions, just update the PR, and then we can go from there. Sound good?
Yeah, sounds good. Maybe I'll ping you offline. Just one thing that I wanted to mention about the schemas.
Yeah. All right, awesome. I'll talk to you guys later then, right? All right,
thank you very much.
Good one.
Good talking to you. Bye-bye.
Bye.